This story is not like any other story. The title is Juha and Sleep. Without any introduction, let's dive into the events of this beautiful tale. In a small village, Juha worked hard from dawn to sunset. He plowed the land, took care of the animals, and harvested crops. But in the past few days, he started feeling an unusual exhaustion. At night, he lay in bed trying to sleep, but sleep escaped him like a mirage. Every time he closed his eyes, he drowned in thoughts about the next day's work. He tossed and turned in bed until dawn, without getting any rest. One morning, Juha decided to find a solution. He said to himself, "There must be a way to get a good night's sleep. I will ask my neighbors and friends. Maybe someone knows a magical trick to help me." First, Juha visited his neighbor, Sheikh Hakim, who was known for his wisdom. The sheikh listened to Juha's problem and then said, "Juha, sleep comes with relaxation. Try taking a warm bath before bed. It will calm your nerves." Juha thanked the sheikh and decided to try his advice. That evening, he took a warm bath. But instead of feeling relaxed, he felt refreshed, as if his body had fully awakened. Maybe a warm bath is not the solution, he thought. The next day, he went to his friend Saleh, a market vendor. Juha asked him for a remedy for sleeplessness. Saleh confidently said, "Try drinking a cup of warm milk with honey before bed. That always works for me." Juha followed the advice exactly, but instead of feeling sleepy, he felt heavy and uncomfortable. "This is not the solution either," he muttered in frustration. Then he visited his neighbor Nesma, an expert in herbs. She advised him to drink mint tea before bed. Juha tried it, but the strong mint smell made him feel fresh instead of sleepy. "It seems that all these remedies only make me more tired," he said, confused. Finally, Juha stood in the middle of his room and said to himself, "Maybe sleep doesn't need complicated solutions. Perhaps the answer is much simpler." After losing hope in all traditional solutions, Juha decided to try something new. One moonlit night, he lay on his bed, trying to sleep. But he noticed something strange. The closer he got to sleep, the further it seemed to move away, as if they were playing hide-and-seek. He thought for a moment, and then said, "If sleep is running away from me, then I will chase it until I catch it." He put on his cloak and left his house in the middle of the night, walking through the dark village streets, whispering, "Where are you, sleep? Come to me." On his way, he passed by Sheikh Hakim's house. The sheikh was sitting on his doorstep and was surprised to see Juha. He asked, "What are you doing at this late hour, Juha?" Juha seriously replied, "I am chasing sleep. It ran away from me, and I am trying to catch it." The sheikh laughed and said, "Sleep is not something you can chase, Juha." But Juha was not convinced and continued walking until he reached the village square, which was empty under the moonlight. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound behind a tree. Excited, he said, "That must be sleep hiding behind the tree." He ran towards it, but he only found a black cat staring at him with glowing eyes. The cat meowed loudly, making Juha jump in fear. Then he heard another sound coming from the river. He eagerly said, "Maybe sleep went there." He rushed to the river, but only found a fisherman casting his net into the water. The fisherman, surprised, asked, "What are you doing here, Juha?" Juha answered seriously, "I am looking for sleep. It ran away from me." The fisherman laughed and said, "Sleep doesn't live in the river, Juha." But Juha did not give up. He continued searching until he reached a wheat field where the air was cool and the stars twinkled in the sky. He had used up all his energy from walking and running, so he sat under a big tree to rest. Suddenly, he felt something touch his shoulder. He looked around, but found no one. He whispered to himself, "Maybe sleep has finally found me." Moments later, he felt his eyelids grow heavy, his head tilted forward, and before he knew it, he fell into a deep sleep under the tree. In the morning, Juha woke up feeling more rested than ever. He looked around and finally realized that sleep had never been running away from him. It was just waiting for the right moment to come. He laughed at himself and said, "It seems that sleep doesn't need chasing, but patience and relaxation." Juha returned home, still laughing, but he knew that last night was just luck and that he still needed a permanent solution to his problem. While wandering through the village market, Juha heard a street vendor shouting, "Magic pillows! Pillows that help you sleep instantly. If you suffer from insomnia, try them." Curious, Juha approached the vendor and asked, "Is this pillow really magical? Will it help me sleep?" The vendor confidently replied, "Of course. This pillow is filled with rare herbs and magical ingredients that guarantee deep sleep." Without hesitation, Juha bought the pillow and went home happily. He thought to himself, "Finally, I found the solution." That evening, he placed the magic pillow on his bed, lay down comfortably, and closed his eyes, expecting to fall asleep quickly. But minutes passed, then hours, and nothing happened. Worry crept into his mind. He kept changing his position, but sleep remained as distant as ever. In the middle of the night, he sat up, frustrated, and said loudly, "This pillow isn't magical. The vendor tricked me." Determined to find out the truth, he opened the pillow cover and found nothing but ordinary cotton and some dried herbs like mint and lemon. Juha laughed at himself and said, "I fooled myself. There's no magic. It's just a regular pillow." But he wasn't angry. Instead, he learned a new lesson. Maybe sleep doesn't need a magic pillow or complicated solutions. It just needs real comfort. Just when Juha thought he was close to solving his sleep problem, something unexpected disturbed his peace. One night, as he was getting ready for bed, he heard a loud and repeated meowing coming from outside his window. The sound was so annoying that it seemed like the cat was in a state of excitement. Juha wondered, where did this cat come from? And why is it crying so loudly at this hour of the night? He looked out his window and saw a big black cat sitting on his neighbor's wall, meowing loudly as if talking to the moon. Juha tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. Every time he was about to fall asleep, the meowing woke him up again. The next morning, Juha decided to solve the problem himself. He went to his neighbor, Sheikh Hakim, and asked, "Sheikh Hakim, is this your cat? It keeps me awake with its constant meowing." Sheikh Hakim laughed and replied, "No, Juha, this is a stray cat. No one knows where it came from." Since there was no clear solution, Juha decided to take action. That evening, he came up with a plan to get rid of the cat. He filled a bowl with water and decided to splash it on the cat whenever it came near his house. But when he tried his plan, he slipped on the ground and spilled the water all over himself instead of the cat. Juha didn't give up. He tried another plan. He placed a small fish far away from his house, hoping the cat would follow the smell and leave him in peace. But to his surprise, the cat ate the fish and then returned to the wall, meowing even louder than before. Still determined, Juha thought of a new trick. What if I put the cat in a box and take it far away from the village? He brought a box, placed some food inside, and waited for the cat to enter. As soon as it did, he rushed to close the box. But the cat was faster. It jumped out at the last second, leaving Juha running after it through the village streets in vain. After all these failed attempts, Juha sighed and said to himself, "It looks like this cat is stronger than me. Maybe I should learn to live with it instead of fighting it." The next night, he decided to try a different approach. He placed a small rug outside his window and put some food on it. Then he closed his window and went back to bed. When the cat arrived, it found the food, ate it, and then sat quietly on the rug, cleaning itself. This time, it didn't make a single noise. Juha smiled and whispered to himself, "Finally, I found the solution." The cat wasn't annoying. It was just hungry. After solving the cat problem, Juha felt that he needed a more comfortable bed to help him sleep. His old bed was rough and worn out, and he believed that buying a new one would be the final solution to his problem. In the morning, he went to the village carpenter's workshop and said, "I want a comfortable bed that will help me sleep. Can you make one for me?" The carpenter confidently replied, "Of course, Juha. I will make you the best bed in the village, comfortable and spacious." Juha paid the deposit and eagerly waited for the bed to be finished. After a few days, he returned to the workshop, excited to see his new bed. But as soon as he saw it, he was shocked. The bed was too small, barely big enough for a small child. He turned to the carpenter and said in surprise, "Is this bed for me? It's way too small." The carpenter innocently replied, "Yes, Juha, I made it according to the measurements you gave me." Juha realized that he might have made a mistake in describing the size, but he decided to try the bed anyway. That evening, he attempted to sleep on it, but his feet dangled off the edge. He tried lying on his side, but he fell to the floor because the bed was too narrow. He curled up like a cat, but he felt suffocated. Then he tried sleeping while sitting, but his back started to ache. Every attempt ended in failure, and Juha grew more frustrated. In the middle of the night, he gave up on the new bed and said to himself, "This bed isn't a solution. It's a new problem." He carried the tiny bed, placed it in a corner of the room, and returned to his old bed. Despite its roughness, at least it was big enough for him to sleep on comfortably. The doctor's strange prescription. After all his failed attempts to cure his insomnia, Juha decided to consult a specialist. He heard about a famous doctor in a neighboring village who was said to cure even the toughest cases of insomnia. One morning, he rode his donkey and headed to the village. When he arrived at the clinic, he patiently waited for his turn. Finally, he entered the doctor's office and found him sitting on a small wooden chair. The doctor smiled and said, "Welcome, Juha. What seems to be the problem?" Juha sighed and replied tiredly, "I suffer from insomnia. No matter what I do, I just can't sleep." The doctor examined him and asked several questions about his daily habits and diet. After thinking for a moment, he said seriously, "I have a magic cure for you. Before bed, you must hop on one foot for 10 minutes. This will help you fall asleep quickly." Juha looked at the doctor in disbelief and asked, "Hopping on one foot? Will that really help?" The doctor confidently replied, "Of course. This exercise will tire your body, making it easier for you to relax." Juha thanked the doctor and returned home, carrying this strange prescription. That evening, he decided to try it. He stood in the middle of his room and began hopping on one foot. At first, it seemed easy, but after a few minutes, he started feeling exhausted. He thought to himself, "Maybe this will actually work." But before he could finish his thought, he tripped and fell to the ground. He got up, aching, but was determined to continue. He tried hopping again, but this time he bumped into the table, knocking over a jug of water. Hearing the noise, His wife rushed into the room and asked in shock, "Juha, what are you doing?" Panting, he replied, "I'm following the doctor's advice. I have to hop on one foot to sleep." But Juha was determined to complete the exercise. He tried again, but crashed into his bed, collapsing onto it from exhaustion. In the end, he was so tired that he couldn't get up again. He whispered to himself, "Maybe the doctor was right. I'm really exhausted now." The next morning, Juha woke up sore all over and groaned, "Maybe hopping on one foot isn't the best solution. But at least I slept." And so, Juha continued his search for a calmer cure for his insomnia. Until one day, he heard about the secret of honey. That evening, Juha decided to follow the doctor's advice and take a spoonful of honey before bed. But then he thought to himself, "If one spoon is beneficial, what if I take more? Surely I'll sleep deeply." Without hesitation, he grabbed a jar of honey and started eating greedily, spoon after spoon, until he had finished half the jar. Then he sat on his bed with confidence and said, "Now I will definitely fall into a deep sleep." But soon after, he felt a heavy sensation in his stomach. He thought to himself, "Maybe this means the honey is working." However, the heaviness turned into sharp pain, and he began tossing and turning, trying to find a comfortable position. Worried, he muttered, "Why do I feel this pain? Isn't honey supposed to be good for me?" Then he realized his mistake and sighed regretfully. "It seems I ate too much." Unable to bear the pain any longer, he got up and paced around the house, hoping to calm his stomach. He drank some water, but the discomfort remained. By midnight, he decided to go outside and breathe in the fresh air. Sitting under a tree, still in pain, he muttered, "I've ruined everything by overindulging in honey." After all his failed attempts, Juha decided to completely change his routine. He remembered a man once telling him, "Sleeping under the stars brings peace and relaxation. Try it, and you'll feel calm." Juha loved the idea and decided to give it a try. On a clear night, he took a mat and a pillow and went to the garden behind his house. Gazing at the twinkling stars, he said, "This time I will sleep soundly." He lay down on the mat and admired the stars. "How beautiful they are! They look like they're smiling at me." But instead of feeling sleepy, he noticed that the stars seemed to multiply the more he looked at them. He thought, "How many are there? Maybe if I count them, I'll get sleepy." He started counting. 1, 2, 3. But quickly realized that the task was harder than he expected. The stars were too many, and every time he finished one set, another appeared. Then he thought of another trick. What if I focus on a small part of the sky? But even that didn't work. The stars were too close together, and soon he began feeling dizzy from staring up for too long. Then another idea came to him. I'll divide the sky into sections and count each one separately. So he picked up a stick and began drawing imaginary lines in the air, trying to divide the sky into sections. But instead of helping, it only made him even more exhausted. Finally, after hours of trying, Juha felt completely drained. He sighed. "This is harder than I thought." And before he knew it, he had fallen into a deep sleep, while the stars above continued to smile down at him. One day, Juha decided to leave his village for a change of scenery. Perhaps he would find a new solution to his problem. While walking through the countryside, he noticed a shepherd sitting under a tree, looking exhausted. Juha approached him and asked, "Are you all right, my friend?" The shepherd sighed and replied sadly, "I suffer from insomnia. No matter how hard I try, I just can't sleep. Juha laughed and said, "You're just like me. I have the same problem. Maybe we can help each other." Juha suggested they try singing together to relax. They started singing, but their voices were completely out of tune, causing the sheep to scatter in all directions. The shepherd panicked and said, "This won't work. My sheep will get lost." Juha thought for a moment and then suggested, "What if we count the sheep? They say it helps with sleep." They both started counting the sheep, but soon they disagreed on the numbers. Juha said, "There are 10 sheep." The shepherd argued, "No, there are 12. The disagreement turned into a debate, which only made the sheep wander even farther. The shepherd cried out, "This isn't working. My sheep are getting lost." Finally, Juha and the shepherd decided to sit under the tree and talk about their troubles. Juha said, "Maybe insomnia comes from overthinking." The shepherd nodded and replied, "Yes, I'm always thinking about my sheep and worrying about the future." As they shared their worries and stories, they both began to feel more relaxed. Before they knew it, they had both drifted into a deep sleep under the tree. The next morning, they woke up feeling refreshed. The shepherd smiled and said gratefully, "Thank you, Juha. You've helped me more than you can imagine." Feeling some improvement in his sleep, Juha decided to try another method he had heard from a friend: taking a hot bath before bed. His friend had told him, "A hot bath relaxes your muscles and calms your nerves, making it easier to sleep." That evening, Juha decided to follow the advice. He filled his bathtub with hot water and added some aromatic oils, as he had heard they helped with relaxation. As he soaked in the warm water, he sighed in relief and said, "This time, I'll sleep like a baby." But as he enjoyed the warmth, he started feeling drowsy. He thought, "Maybe I should just sleep here in the tub." Before he realized it, he had dozed off. The problem was that the water was still running, and the tub was filling up quickly. Soon, the water overflowed, spreading all over the bathroom and seeping into the next room. At that moment, Juha woke up to the sound of splashing water. He jumped up to turn off the tap, but the floor was too slippery. He lost his balance and fell, exclaiming, "What a disaster!" After finally shutting off the water, he spent hours drying the floor and cleaning up the mess. Completely exhausted, he slumped onto the couch and muttered to himself, "I wanted to relax, but I created a catastrophe instead." And so, Juha learned that while relaxation is important, it must be done carefully. He decided to try other, less chaotic methods in the future. One evening, Juha decided to try his friend's advice in his own way. "If one spoonful of honey is good, what if I eat more?" he thought. He ate half the jar, convinced he would sleep deeply. But soon, he felt a heavy pain in his stomach. Trying to ease the discomfort, he walked around, drank water, and even sat in the garden, regretting his overeating. Desperate, he remembered a tip. Sleeping under the stars promotes relaxation. He lay in his backyard, admiring the twinkling sky. "Maybe counting stars will help me sleep," he thought. But the stars were too many. He tried dividing the sky into sections, but that only exhausted him more. Finally, the effort wore him out, and he drifted into deep sleep. One day, Juha met a tired shepherd. "I suffer from insomnia," the shepherd admitted. Juha laughed. "Me too. Let's help each other." They tried singing, but their terrible voices scared the sheep. "This won't work," the shepherd cried. "Let's count the sheep," Juha suggested. But they argued over the numbers and lost track of the flock. Defeated, they sat under a tree, sharing their worries. As they talked, their minds eased, and before they knew it, they both fell into a peaceful sleep. In the morning, The shepherd smiled. Thank you, Juha. Talking helped more than anything. Determined to sleep better, Juha tried a hot bath. He added aromatic oils, sighed in delight, and soon felt drowsy. Maybe I can sleep right here, he murmured. But the water kept running. As he dozed off, the tub overflowed, flooding the house. Startled awake, Juha scrambled to stop the water but slipped, crashing to the floor. What a disaster, he groaned. Exhausted from cleaning up, he collapsed onto the couch. I just wanted to relax, not cause a flood, he sighed, vowing to find a safer way to sleep next time. But the problem was that the water kept flowing, gradually overflowing from the tub. After a while, the water flooded the bathroom and then seeped into the adjacent room. Suddenly, Juha woke up in a panic to find himself in the middle of a water puddle. He quickly got up, trying to stop the water, but slipped on the wet floor and fell hard, shouting, "What a mess!" After managing to control the situation, he spent hours drying the floor and cleaning up. Finally, he sat on the couch, exhausted, and said resignedly, "It seems a hot bath isn't such a great idea, especially if I'm going to sleep in it." And so Juha realized that relaxation is important, but it needs to be done cautiously. He decided to look for other, less chaotic ways to solve his problem after all his failed attempts to sleep. In the morning, Juha went to the village square and called the people to gather around him. He stood among them with a calm smile and said, "My friends, I want to share something important with you. I've been on a long journey with insomnia, trying every possible way, from magical pillows to hopping on one foot. But in the end, I found that the solution was right in front of me all along, simple and easy." One of the neighbors stepped forward and asked curiously, "And what is this solution, Juha?" Juha responded while pointing to the vast sky, "Relaxation and surrendering to rest. There's no need to search for complicated solutions. Just sit in a quiet place, listen to the wind, gaze at the stars, and let sleep come to you peacefully." The people began talking about their struggles with insomnia and how they had tried various methods without success. One said, "I've tried all kinds of teas and herbs, but I still can't sleep well." Another added, "I bought the most expensive pillows, yet I still don't feel comfortable." Juha laughed and said, "I was just like you. But now, after learning the lesson, I want to teach you how to sleep peacefully." He then began teaching them simple relaxation techniques, like deep breathing and listening to calming sounds. He told them, "Don't think too much about sleep. Just relax and let sleep come to you naturally." That night, the villagers followed Juha's advice. They sat in their yards, listening to the wind and watching the stars. The next morning, one of them said joyfully, "I slept deeply for the first time in years." A woman added, "I woke up feeling refreshed and full of energy. Thank you, Juha." Thus, Juha became not just a man who told stories, but a wise teacher in his village. People came to him for advice, not just about sleep, but about life as well. One day, a neighbor asked him, "Juha, how do you live with such simplicity and peace?" Juha smiled and replied, "Life isn't as complicated as we think. The important thing is to live it moment by moment, and not to overthink the future or the past." The villagers began applying Juha's philosophy to their daily lives and said, "If sleep requires relaxation and simplicity, maybe everything in life needs that too." Juha lived a life full of contentment and happiness. He spent his days working simply in the fields and his nights under the sky, surrounded by friends and loved ones. One night, while sitting in his yard, a group of children approached him and asked eagerly, "Juha, How did you become so wise? Juha laughed and said, Wisdom doesn't come from easy experiences, but from failed attempts. I've tried many things that didn't work, but I learned from them. One of the children asked, Can we learn from you? Juha replied, gently patting his head, Of course, my little ones. Wisdom is learning from our mistakes and living life with simplicity and joy. Thus, Juha became not just a storyteller, but a teacher of life. Everyone lived in peace and happiness, and the spirit of simplicity and joy spread everywhere. Finally, Juha looked up at the sky and said to himself, Life is beautiful when we live it with a calm heart and a simple mind, and thank God for everything. And so, we come to the end of our story for today. If you liked the story, don't forget to support us by subscribing to the channel and encouraging us to bring more interesting stories.